Alhamdulillah, today we have a very important session, and we're joined today with or by Brother Hood. Um, Today's session is halal investments, and so essentially we're just gonna Brother Hood is gonna talk for about 45 minutes. Inshallah, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Hopefully, we should get the Q&A session maybe around 2:45, 2:50. That should have enough time for all the questions, inshallah. So, without further ado, I'm gonna give it to Brother Hood, and we can start this important session, inshallah. Thank you. Actually, two things before we start. Sorry, if you guys can move up a little bit because we have a lot of chairs in the front. If you guys are okay with that, inshallah. And then also, before we start, I'm gonna give it to Brother Firdaus just really quick. I think he wanted something to say.
Yeah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First and foremost, I was sitting next to a brother Anthony Segura there, and he was telling me a story how he discovered Islam on his own. So he's somewhat a new Muslim. So say salam to him, Anthony Segura. He was just his story is long, but it's very interesting how he found Islam, and he's a student at the American University. He's applying to a university in IMAAM in Malaysia, whose current president is our friend, the ones that I know. So I think I'm gonna send him the text to accept his inshallah. So Brother Anthony, don't feel this is your home, so don't feel comfortable, feel at home, inshallah. All right. Brotherhood, thank you for coming here. And my dear brothers and sisters, as we conducted more and more activities in da'wah, education, in Islamic, one aspect of that we have not been investing so much attention on, maybe a few of you only, but largely we are not so much versed in when come to investment, especially in the halal way of investment. And today we are so fortunate, alhamdulillah, we have Brotherhood from from Dallas, but Saturna capital. I have browsed some of his information online because I provided Brother Arif. Very, very interesting. I think we need to be really paying attention to this. There's a lot of to be captured. So without further ado, I'll allow Brother Hood to continue. Inshallah. Welcome, brother.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure being here. It's like being home. So I was born in DC. Both of my parents, like Brother Anton, converted to Islam in DC. They were both a student at Howard University. My mother, may Allah have mercy on her, she's buried right down the street from here. And so always coming back. I grew up going to MCC as a little kid. So alhamdulillah, this is always home. And so just a little bit about my background. My name is Hood Williams. I'm the regional manager for Amana Mutual Funds. So that means that I cover, basically anything from account opening, but also educational. Like, how do we really educate our community, the Muslim community, about what it means to invest? So, but I was born and raised in the DC, Virginia area. I went to college at Oldham University in Norfolk, Virginia. Upon graduating, I moved back up here, and I actually had the opportunity to be a youth director at the All Dulles Area Muslim Society, the Adams Center in Virginia. So after being a youth director there is where I met, where I learned about Islamic investing. One of our chairmen, Dr. Yaqub Mirza, was a board member at the Adams Center, and he also taught a class called Faith-Based Wealth Building. And so in this class with Dr. Mirza is where I first heard about amount of mutual funds, excuse me. After when I was at the Adams Center, I met my wife. My wife was a professor of Islamic studies at a university in Atlanta, Georgia. So I moved down to Atlanta, Georgia. I started an MBA program at Georgia Tech. Upon graduating, I had an opportunity to go study Islamic finance, which was really important to me. So I actually moved my wife, my 2-year-old, and my 3-month-old all to Malaysia, right, to study Islamic finance. And I remember when I went to tell my wife or ask my wife about moving to Malaysia, I said, sweetheart, what do you think about possibly moving to Kuala Lumpur? And she's like, what are we going to eat? And then we found out over this next year that, finding food in KL is very easy. So we moved there. I studied at the International Center for Education Islamic Finance, where I had a diverse international class. So we had probably around 80 students. 40 of them were from Indonesia. So many of my closest friends from that program were from Indonesia. The other 40 were from everywhere from Uzbekistan to Egypt to Turkey to Russia, so on and so forth. Upon coming back, I pursued a career after my MBA. So I worked in corporate finance for probably about a decade. And then 3 or 4 years ago, the opportunity that I am in now to be the regional manager of IMAAM Mutual Funds opened up. And so I moved myself and my family to Dallas. So alhamdulillah, that's a little bit about myself. But one of the things I really like to start off with is why this is so important to me. So why this work in terms of Islamic investing is so important. It's a story about a Muslim woman. And you can imagine this Muslim woman converted to Islam in 1970. So I'm sure when new Muslims now, when they convert to Islam, they have a wealth of resources. They have a wealth of masjids. The internet can give you anything. But just imagine becoming a Muslim in 1970 in the South. And so fast forward, this woman decided to wear hijab. And so that caused a lot of estrangement with her family. So you can imagine how much faith this woman had to have, right, to practice Islam over 5 decades in the U.S. And so I'm sitting down with her talking about her retirement. And so she's showing me how much she's getting in Social Security. She's showing me, she paid off her home. I said, well, auntie, where's your 401k? Where's your individual retirement account? Where's your 403b? And she said, I never invested in that because I thought it was haram. So this Muslim woman who's been incredibly faithful to her faith for over 5 decades is going into retirement in a very vulnerable state because no one educated her on how to save and invest, but to do so in a way that's aligned with our faith. Because when people with that much faith have an option, they're saying, I'm not going to do it at all if I can't do it aligned with our faith. And the reality of having to sacrifice your future for your faith is not a reality. There are enough opportunities, there are enough companies in the U.S. where you can save and invest for your future, and you can do so in a way that's aligned with your faith. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to try to be a bit brief, and then we're going to leave more time for question and answers. Is that okay? Okay, so Bismillah. So when we're talking about investments, we have to say that investing requires taking on risk. And this risk can include the loss of capital, all right? And so when we think about why people invest, they invest to buy a home, to do something like go to Hajj. One of the first kind of Islamic investments was the Indonesian Hajj program where people invest to go to Hajj. For their children's education, for retirement, also for healthcare. So when we think about the habits of successful investors, we're not going to drain the slide, but there's a couple of things that we want to point out. The first one is to make sure you're diversifying. So diversification is important. So this is where mutual funds come in. Because instead of buying just one stock, right? Because we all know the adage of don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? So don't put all your investments in one stock. And so when you purchase a mutual fund, you're purchasing a basket of stocks. So diversification is important. And the second one is don't try to time the market. You know, earlier this year, when I was doing a presentation, and they would say, Brother Hood, what's going to happen to the market when Trump gets elected? And I told them, I said, if I knew that, I will be in the Caribbean. I wouldn't be here giving you a presentation. And so, you know, we always think that, you know, we kind of know if the market's going to be up and the market's going to be down. But when we're thinking about investing for the next 10, 20, 30 years, the price that you got in is not going to be very important. So instead of worrying about timing the market, we're going to talk more about time in the market. So we're going to touch on investing for college. When we think about the cost of college, you can see it's gone up, almost tripled since 1993. The average student graduates from college with over $30,000 in debt. Just imagine that. Just imagine starting your professional life with $30,000 you owe to someone else. And so in this illustration, just by replacing your fancy cup of coffee, right? For me, it's a dirty chai latte, right? I know people are like, dirty chai, he's Muslim. That just means a shot of espresso in my chai, right? And so if that's $5 a day, $25 a week, $100 a month, and let's just say $1,000 a year. So instead of using that dirty chai latte, I invest that in my children's education, right? So by 3 years old, they will have $31.94. But let's fast forward into the age of 18. By just that small investment strategy, my child would have over $34,458. And this is based off of 7% rate of return. The reality is I have 6 children, so I don't drink that much coffee in a week. So we got to need another strategy. Yeah, exactly. We come here. So when you think about investing like that, what are some of the tools or the accounts that you can use for that? So the first one is an educational savings account. You could put up to $2,000 a year per child up until the age of 18, and then they have up until the age of 30 to use it. If they don't use it by the age of 30, you can actually transfer it to another relative or another family member. The ESA is great because it's tax deferred. So when you put money in, right, you don't get a tax deduction, but the money grows tax free. And then when you take it out for education, you don't have to pay any taxes. You don't have to you don't have to pay any taxes on the profits when you take it out, when you use it for education. And education is not just college, but it can be secondary school, primary school. It could be a laptop for college. It can be travel. Like, for example, if you're going to IMAAM and you have money in a ESA, you can buy your ticket with money from that ESA. So it's it's kind of very flexible, but it has to be educational related. The one downside of the ESA that if you're a high wage earner, which means if you make between 190 and 220, it limits how much money you can put in the ESA because you're a high wage earner. But for those high wage earners, you have option of having a UGMA or a UTMA account. So these accounts allow you to put in a lot more money. You can put in $18,000 per child per person. So that means a mother could put in 18, a father could put in 18, grandparents could put in 18. So theoretically, it's kind of unlimited. And so those funds become the property of the child, right? But you, as the parent, are still the custodian until they reach the age of 21. And so the UGMAs are not tax deferred like the ESA, but the first $2,500 of taxable income gets taxed, gets preferential tax treatment. So even though it's a taxable account, there is some preferential tax treatment in the ESA. One of the things I'm not going to talk about, you're not going to see it up here, is the 529 plans. So 529 are state-sponsored educational savings accounts. These plans are great, but unfortunately, when you're investing in a 529, the state is controlling the investment options. So there's not a 529 plan across the country that actually has Sharia-compliant investment options in their 529. So that's one of the things that we're working on. We're working with the state of Michigan, the state of California, the state of Washington to kind of get them to have Sharia-compliant options in their 529. And even if you live in Maryland or if you live in Virginia, you can open a 529 in any state across the country. So if we can get it open in California, I think a lot of other states will get on board. Okay, so now we're moving over to retirement. And, you know, often parents are thinking about, should I invest this extra $300-$500 in my children's education, or should I invest it in retirement? And so there's two things that I think about usually. The first one is that there's a few different ways to pay for college education. They can get a scholarship if they're 6'6" and have a good jump shot, right? They will get paid to go to school, right? They can work their way through school. But there's no other way to prepare for retirement other than what you put in. And the second point is that by making sure your retirement is sound, you're actually benefiting your children. Because roughly when you're in retirement age, if you're around 65, your kids are going to be in their 30s or 40s, right? Your children hopefully are going to be starting their own family. So if you're in retirement and you didn't save up anything for retirement, your children who are also trying to start their family are going to have to also provide for you. So by making sure that your retirement is solid, that is safe, you take this possible burden off of your children. And so for those two reasons, I think it's really important for us to make sure that we have our retirement safe so that we don't put additional burdens on our children. It's that same rule, right? When they tell you on the plane, put your mask on first before you help your child. And so when we think about retirement, there's a few sources of income. We have pension plans, you have personal savings and investment, Social Security, and employment during retirement. What do you think is the average Social Security payment in the U.S. in 2024? 1,300, 1,500. 1975. Okay, that's not bad. We're not giving that back to Uncle Sam, right? But what can you get in this area for 1975? Can you get a 3-bedroom with a nice view and can you buy a house with 1975 in this area? Okay. So maybe 50 years ago, right? But not today. So Social Security is not going to be enough, right? So Social Security is going to be great. It's going to be there, but it's not going to be enough to take care of your whole retirement. And so when you think about personal savings and investments, you have 401ks, you have IRAs, you have real estate, you have life insurance. The ones highlighted in orange are not compliant with Sharia because they're based on interest, annuities, CDs, and bonds. So in this portrayal, the person, it shows you the awesome power of starting early. So the person on the left started saving just $1,000 a year from the age 25 to the age 35, right? So they saved $10,000. The person on the right started a little later. So they started at the age of 35 and they saved $1,000 a year from the age of 35 to the age 65. So they saved a total of $30,000. But at the age of 65, the person who saved less but started early is going to have $112,000, while the person who started later but saved 3 times as much is only going to have $101,000. And this is based on a 7% rate of return. And so you can see that even if you invest more, sometimes you can't catch up from someone who started investing early. And I know from the people in this room, we don't have the young ones here. So usually I just skip the slide when the audience is a little older, because they get mad at me. They were like, Hood, this wasn't a presentation for us. You need to. Oh, okay, yeah. We got one in the front. And so this is my favorite slide. This just shows you the importance of starting early. So if you think about being 25, starting your professional career, and you save just $250 per paycheck, that's $500 a month. That's $6,000 a year. So if you start that at 25 and you fast forward to your 65 in retirement, you'll have $1.3 million. But hey, I've been 25. The last thing a 25-year-old thinks about is retirement. They probably think about death more than they think about retirement, right? And so that 25-year-old, if they just waited just a decade, if they just waited 10 years, and you start that at 35, $250 per paycheck, $500 a month, $6,000 a year. Starting at 35, you only have $606,000. So by just starting 10 years later, you miss out on the investment opportunity of over $500,000. Now that's an expensive decade. And so when we think about someone who started so young, right, they will have saved $240,000 out of their paycheck, which is a lot of money. But they will have over $1 million worth of profits. So 4 times the amount that they actually saved, they would have in profits. And so that's an important thing. One of the things I think about is that our book, the Quran, talks about retirement. And when I say that the Quran talks about retirement, people are like, I don't remember a 401k being in the Quran. What's this guy talking about? And so when you think about Surah Yusuf, right? And Surah Yusuf is interpreting the dream of Pharaoh. So Pharaoh had a dream about 7 fat cows and 7 lean ones, and 7 green ears of corn and 7 other withered. And he said that we're going to have 7 years where we're going to have the greatest harvest, where we're just going to have harvest and it's going to be free flowing and we're going to think it lasts forever. And then we're going to have 7 years of famine, where the harvests are going to be that low that they're going to outstrip everything we had from those other 7 years. And so that's really what we're talking about in retirement. Because Prophet Yusuf said, put me in charge of the storehouse, because I will take from those years of great harvest to provide for those lean years. And so when we're thinking about retirement, the average lifespan is 80 years. Those first 20 years, you're just kind of figuring it out. Those last 20 years, you're slowing down. So you have 40 years to earn more money than you'll ever make in your life, to have more vitality, energy, your brain is working. So those are the years of harvest. Those are the years of your greatest harvest. And so you got to take a little bit from those 40 years to provide for these later 20 years where things are going to be lean. So the idea of retirement in America is only roughly 50 or 60 years old. But our book was revealed over 1,400 years ago, telling us the same idea that we have to take from these good years to provide for lean years. There's this book. It's called The Triple Package. And it's saying that there's, it's saying 3 things are needed for people for different groups to do well. and I'll just fast forward to the main point, that she said that last one was delayed gratification. And so when we think about investing, what we're talking about is delayed gratification. That I get my paycheck, I want to go out, I want to buy video games, I want to go out to eat, but I have to take a little bit away from that and delay gratifying myself and put it away for the future so I can take care of myself later. And this was so important when I heard this, because my father talked about this often as a young boy, because this is what our religion is about. Our religion is about delayed gratification. Fasting, Ramadan, is about delayed gratification. You know, the Quran says that paradise is better and longer lasting, right? So don't just get all the gratification you can in this life, because paradise is better. I often say the only thing that has better returns than a amount of mutual funds is paradise. And so the last point about this is that when we're thinking about retirement, retirement is not an age, it's a number, right? Because because you're trying to replace your income with passive income. So once you have $1.28 million, right, and that's growing on an average rate of 7% a year, that you can say, hey, I don't want it to grow. I actually want to take that income. So if you have $1.2 million, you can have $90,000 of investment income every year in perpetuity and still have $1.2 million to leave to IMAAM, right? And so like, say if $90,000 is not enough. Okay, well, the number for you can be 1.5 million. Or say $90,000, you don't need that much. So you can get to $750,000 and say, I can retire because now I have my investments are going to be able to replace my income. So when we're thinking about retirement, the retirement accounts, the first one is a traditional individual retirement account. You could put in up to $7,000 per year. Up until April, you can still contribute for 2024. So at the beginning of the year, you can contribute $7,000 for 2024 and $7,000 for 2025. If you're above 50, then you can contribute an additional $1,000 catch up. And so a traditional IRA is that you get a tax deduction when you put it in. So if you put in $7,000 now, and you make $50,000, is as if you made 43. So you got a tax deduction, the money will grow tax-free, and then when you're in retirement and you take the money out, that's when you'll pay taxes on it. The alternative is the Roth IRA. So the Roth IRA has the same contribution limits, but you put the money in after tax. So if you put in $7,000, you don't get a tax deduction. It's still going to grow tax-free, but then when you're in retirement and you take it out, you won't have to pay any taxes on it. So the Roth IRA, after-tax contribution, when you take it out, don't pay taxes. The traditional, it's a pre-tax contribution, and you pay taxes when you're taking it out. Additionally, about the Roth, because you're putting in after-tax dollars, you can take out your contributions at any time. Because life happens, you can take it out without penalty. And after 5 years, you can take out the profit and the contribution if you're paying for college for anyone in your immediate family, if you're trying to buy a home, if you have major medical expenses, or if you're 59 and a half. So the Roth IRA is great because it gives you these tax advantages, but it also gives you a little bit of flexibility. And the last one is the employer plans, so 401ks, 403bs. These accounts are awesome because they allow you to put in much more. So the 401k contribution limit is $23,000 for 2024. But 401ks and 403bs are the only way you can contribute is through your employer. So these are employer-based plans. The one downside is that the employer is also controlling the investment options. So you may not have Sharia compliant investment options in a 401k. So there's two solutions. The first solution is you ask your employer if they have a self-directed brokerage account. So a self-directed brokerage account, they allow you to self-direct your investments in your 401k. So you can buy Sharia compliant investments. The second option is that after you leave a company, the 401k that you have with that company, you can transfer it over. It's called a rollover. You can roll over that 401k into an individual retirement account with IMAAM mutual funds. And so all of these accounts that I've talked about, the IRA, the Roth IRA, the ESA, the UGMA, they can all be opened with IMAAM mutual funds, 100% online. And the minimum to get started is $100. So it's a $100 investment. There's no fee. There's no cost. $100 investment in 20 minutes online, and you can have your account open and fund it. Okay, so we talked about the accounts. We talked about retirement. We talked about education. Now I'm going to talk about our investments, right? Because the first question is, how do I want to invest? Am I investing for education? Am I investing for college? Am I just having a regular investment account? The second one is, once I open that account, what do I want to invest in? And so now we're going to talk about that question. So when we're talking about investment according to Islamic principles, the number one thing you have to have is an outside kind of supervisory who's making sure that it's Sharia compliant. So for us, we use a company called Amani Advisors. They're based in KL, and they review our portfolio on a quarterly basis, and they give us a Sharia certificate on an annual basis. And so what are they really reviewing? So the first rule, the first criteria, the first filter is that you look at the primary business of the company. If it's pork, if it's alcohol, if it's gambling, if it's pornography, if it's anything haram, we're not going to invest in that company, full stop. Even for us, if it's a weapons manufacturing, if it's Boeing, if it's Lockheed Martin, we're not going to invest in them, full stop. The second, the scholars say, is not just what they're doing, but how they operate. So we have to see how much debt they have. Their debt has to be less than a third of the value of the company. And they look at the type of the assets they have on their balance sheet. So accounts receivable has to be less than 45%. And the last one is, these companies are going to have impermissible revenue, right? And so the impermissible revenue can't come from their primary business. It has to come from a secondary or tertiary business. And it has to be less than 5% of the total revenue. So an example always helps for this. So if you think about Southwest Airlines, it's a transportation company, no problem with that. But they sell alcohol on their flights. So how much revenue do they make from alcohol sales compared to their total revenue? So for Southwest, it's very small. So that one would pass that kind of test. We don't invest in Southwest, but it's just a good illustration. In addition to this, we also look at ESG. So we also look at environmental sustainability and governance. And so we have a proprietary ESG score to make sure these companies are not just not doing bad stuff, but they're also good environmental stewards. And so we have 4 different mutual funds because we have different investors. And so each mutual fund has a different level of risk. So we're going to start at the bottom, which is the least level of risk, the amount of participation fund. And this fund is focused on capital preservation and monthly income. So you get a monthly distribution of income in this fund. But it's going to be very, very conservative. So it's going to be very low growth. If we go up one level, we have the amount of income. This is our oldest fund. It was started in 1986, and it focuses on current income. So it looks at large U.S. companies that are paying a dividend. So the dividend-paying stocks usually are a little bit more kind of well capitalized, a little bit more less volatile. If we go up one level, there's the Amana Growth Fund. So this is our largest fund. So it looks at large U.S. companies that are primed for growth. So, and we'll see the returns on the next slide. So in 2009, we had two domestic equity funds. And so we wanted to add an international equity fund. So we started Amana Developing World that invests in companies where are either headquartered in the developing world or the majority of their clients are in the developing world. So Malaysia, Indonesia, South Korea, China, so on and so forth. So when we look at these investments, we always have to have a benchmark. Because if I tell you that I'm giving you a 10% return, you might feel great until you go to work on Monday and Billy's getting a 30% return. And you're gonna be like, okay, that's not so great anymore. So it's always relative. And so for our two U.S. equity funds, the benchmark is the S&P 500, like the largest 500 companies in America. And so it's like, how did our fund perform against just the index of the largest companies in the U.S.? So if you invest $10,000 in 2014 in the Amana Income Fund, in 2024, it would have been worth $25,061. That's a solid investment. The benchmark, so that same investment in the S&P 500 would have been worth $34,254, right? So the S&P outperformed our Amana Income Fund. But if you invested $10,000 in the Amana Growth Fund in 2014, in 2024, it would have been worth $38,590. So it outperformed the S&P 500. So almost a 4-time return on your money. So when we look at those figures, the 10-year performance for Amana Income was right around 9.9. The S&P 500 is 13% in that time period, and the Amana Growth Fund was a 14.7% return over the last decade. Annual average return, so that's on average a 14% return every year. For the Amana Developing World, it was around 3%. The benchmark for that was around 3.6, so it's under the benchmark a little bit. And the Amana Participation Fund is around 1.6, and the FTSE Sukuk Index was around 2%. So we were a little under that benchmark as well. So one of the things that we do offer, in addition to just these mutual funds, the ESAs, the IRAs you can open on our website, is that we do financial planning, right? People are often saying, Hood, I'm 60, I'm 65. I'm planning to work for another 2 years, but I want to know how long my money will last, or what kind of budget do I need to do, or do I need to increase my contribution? And so we do a goal-based financial planning. We do this free of charge, and we just do it for our customers, just so they can know where they are. And then we also have individually managed accounts for individuals or institutions. So if an institution has an endowment, and that's something that we can manage for them, either in the funds or we can create investments for them. So this is my contact information. If you scan that QR code, you'll be able to see all my contact information as well as a link to my calendar. So if you're like, well, Hood, I want to open this account, or I'm thinking about opening this account for my children, you can scan this link. You can scan this QR code, set up a meeting, a Zoom meeting, where we'll kind of talk about your individual kind of investment needs and kind of go from there. So it's really reach it. And there's a table in the back room that has brochures about the ESA or the IRA or our mutual funds. And there's also my business card. On the back of my business card is the same QR code as well. And this is where you can find us on social media. So we have time for questions.
Yeah. Okay. First question, Daniel. If you guys weren't able to take the picture, inshallah, we have business cards after, so you could have the QR code.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair for the great presentation on investment. I had a question about the Sharia certificate. Could you explain more about the organization in Malaysia? And you explained how they found Sharia compliant offices, but Sharia compliant businesses to invest in. But are there other Sharia certificating authorities around the world other than the one in Malaysia?
Definitely. So I think the question was about the Sharia supervisory that we have for the company. So if you think about, just like if it's a halal restaurant, right? There has to be somebody who's making sure that you're sourcing your things are halal. And so for Islamic financial institutions, it's the best practice to have either an outside company or independent Sharia supervisory board. And so, for example, other Islamic financial institutions would just have their Sharia supervisory board on their website, whereas IMAAM such and such, Mufti such and such, so on and so forth. So we are using a company called Amani Advisors. The head scholar, his name is Muhammad Dawud Barker. And so he kind of, is institutionalizing Sharia supervisory because he has a company and you can hire that company to kind of make sure that you're doing everything and, they're going to review your portfolio and your operations, so on and so forth.
Jazakallah khair. And my second question is, you're saying that your organization is pushing for more Sharia compliance, especially with the different type of investment portfolios in states. In recent times, has there been pushback because of paranoia and fear against anything to do with Sharia?
Is there pushback because of anything? One of the things that happens for us is that we're not investing in Muslim companies, right? We're investing in publicly traded companies. We're just making sure that those publicly traded companies are not violating our rules. And so probably half of our shareholders are people of other faiths. So what happens is, in addition to being Sharia compliant, we're also ESG certified. So people will Google ESG mutual funds and they'll see Amana and they'll see our returns that we're beating the S&P and they'll buy a share. They'll see it start doing well and they'll buy more shares. They see it start doing well again, they'll tell their kids about it, right? So oftentimes we would have like a shareholder appreciation event. And we had one in Dallas, we had one in Michigan, where, anybody who's listed as a shareholder, we will send them an invite, come out, bring your families a dinner. Without fail, we usually have like 2 or 3 white people in there who are like, oh. But, it's always just a conversation and we talk to them about. Sometimes they can see it on our website because we talk about the kind of Islamic values behind it. Sometimes they're like surprised. But the companies these are companies that they know. So, usually we haven't, had any pushback. Surprisingly, there's probably even more pushback around ESG than there is about Sharia investing right now.
Jazakallah khair.
No problem.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair for the presentation. A couple questions. I have one personal kind of one and then another personal one. So the first question I have, you talked about traditional versus Roth IRAs as well as the 401k and 403b. Which one do you recommend out of the traditional and the Roth IRA? And more so, if you're working with a company that is Islamic or has these values, should you look more into a 401k and 403b because you'll have better faith that they'll be more halal compliant.
That's very good.
First
So
question.
the question number one about the traditional or the Roth is a case by case. So for example, if I make $300,000 a year, right? I'm going to be in the highest tax bracket. So I'm going to want to do a traditional because I'm going to need a tax deduction now, right? And then when I'm in retirement, I'm probably going to have a lower salary. And so then I could pay taxes when I'm in retirement. If if I make $60,000, $70,000, I don't have any tax problems now. I can still put the money in a Roth, not have to worry about taxes, and because I don't worry about taxes now, and then don't have to worry about taxes when I'm in retirement. So, and then you don't have to, whichever one you choose for 2024, you don't have to choose it every year. So one year you might do a traditional, the next year you might do a Roth, even in your 401k. So in 401ks now, companies are allowing you to do a traditional contribution in your 401k or a Roth contribution in your 401k. So it depends on which one kind of works better for you. And the second question was?
Jazakallah khair for answering the first one. And then the second one's really personal for me because I'm the only Islamic member of my family that I know of. So would your company be an option for, pardon me, like my family, for example? Like if I were to tell my dad about it, as him and I talk about finance, right? He's my dad, we're very close. So would this be an option for like my other family members as well, like my grandma, my mom, my dad, my aunts and uncles? Could I share this with them, or is it?
Of course, yeah. I think it's a mutual fund. So you can open an account with us, like you can open an account with us online, or you can buy us through your account at Merrill Lynch or Charles Schwab or Fidelity. So either way, you can buy our funds. So you don't have to open an account at a Amana Mutual Funds or Sojourner Capital in order to buy the Amana Mutual Funds. Sometimes there'll come out articles about 3 mutual funds that have in your portfolio, and one of them will be the Amana Growth Fund, right? It's a very popular fund, and these are not like Islamic articles. These are just, hey, this is a good fund to have in your portfolio. So.
Jazakallah khair.
Brotherhood, maybe you just like educate or encourage us, some people, many of us, live from paycheck to paycheck, but have the interest of investing some of the little money of they have. Is that do you have some kind of strategy for us and to do, what to do at least first, and then make it consistent? The second questions, can you also discuss it related with the investment for non-profits, like you are in IMAAM right now, and we already did with IMSA, right? So I think it'd be nice, and then Brother Firdaus or Brother Arif, they have a thick checkbook that they can write today and start investing to Amana. Joking.
So Bismillah. So the first one is when you think about living paycheck to paycheck, like how do you get started in investing? And so probably about 2 years ago that we reduced the amount to open an account with us down to $100 across the board. Before it was $250. You go to other companies, it's $500, it's $1,000. We intentionally lowered it because we wanted to make sure that we were available and easy for people to invest and easy for people to see the kind of benefits of investing. You put $100 in, a year is worth 120, then 2 years is worth, and it's like, this gets you like, okay, I wish I put in more money. And so one of the things, if you open an account, you can start investing and you can do an auto investment of $25 per paycheck, right? Or you can do, if that's too much, you can do $25 per quarter. And so by building up that muscle of auto investing every quarter or every month, even if it's just a little bit, that money is also going to be working for you. It's going to be compounding, so on and so forth. And so if you don't notice it and you're not looking at it every day, then it has an opportunity to kind of, really kind of, kind of grow for you. Yeah, to open an account, it's $100 investment, and then you can do $25 a month or $25 a quarter, or you can just say, I'm going to put in money when I can, right? So you don't have to kind of do it on a regular basis. The second question about, one of the things that we've been working on for the last 2 years is that we want to make sure that every Muslim nonprofit in this country has 4 things. Right. The first one is we want them to make sure that they have an investment account. Right. So, nonprofits, just like individuals, have to manage their books. And so if they have $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 at the end of the year and it's sitting in the bank, we're not going to be earning interest on that money because it's haram, but it's just sitting in the bank. I call this lazy money. Nobody wants their kids to just be sitting in the house all day. Nobody wants their money to just be sitting in the bank all day collecting dust, right? And so having this lazy money, like I work hard, right? My kids need to work hard in school. I want my money to work hard for me too, right? So if you have extra money, if you have $500, if you have $1,000, you can invest a portion of that, right? Because you can take it out at any time. So 1 is an investment account. Number 2 is a brokerage account. The brokerage account allows a nonprofit to receive donated shares of stocks. Because, if you have a high net worth individual, there's a good chance that they have tax issues, right? So it's a good chance that they're going to be charitable, or they're going to be looking for a way to reduce their tax burden. And so if someone's going to give a $10,000, $20,000, or $50,000 to a 501c3, they can, say they have Tesla stock. They can sell that stock, pay capital gains tax, and then donate the difference to you. Or if the 501c3 has a brokerage account, they can donate the Tesla shares, right? They might have spent $5,000 on these shares. Now they're worth 50. They can donate them, and they get the full write-off value of the market value of it. So they get a write-off of $50,000. So when IMAAM receives it through their brokerage account, and then they sell it to get that $50,000 cash, they don't have to pay the capital gains, right? Because they're a 501c3. So it's a very advantageous for high net worth individuals. It's very advantageous for 501c3s. And the only person who's missing out is Uncle Sam. And we're okay with that. So number 2 is a brokerage account. Number 3 is a retirement plan. So if you're a 501c3 and you have employees, especially you have full-time employees, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, pay your employees or pay your workers before their sweat dries. So our Prophet was aware of treating people who work for us fairly. And so if we're going to be an institution, we're going to be an Islamic school, if we're going to be a masjid, it's amazing. It's like some of these masjids, you got to come to Dallas. Some of these masjids in Dallas have like 100 employees. And so if you're going to be in an organization and you're going to have a board member in charge of 100 employees, that's just not a small, that's an organization. And people are dedicating their life to you. People are working there 5, 10, 20 years. And then when they leave, what do they have to take with them? At our masjid in Atlanta, I moved to Dallas from Atlanta. We had this Muslim sister who worked at the Islamic school, probably one of the only Islamic schools that's predominantly African American Muslims in America. She worked at the school for 45 years. And when she retired, they had to do a GoFundMe. Because when she retired, the small paycheck that she was getting from us, she was no longer going to get it from us. And so there was no retirement. There was no replacement of the income. They didn't give her, 2, 3, 4, 5% over those last 45 years to take care of her for these next 25 years. So they had to do a fundraising dinner. And so as an organization, especially if it's sizable, especially if you have full-time employees, do a retirement plan, right? Do a retirement plan so that you give them their flowers while they're alive. And you give them something to take to sustain them even when they leave. So that's number 3. And so in number 4, alhamdulillah, I think when we think about Islam in America, and, I said my wife, she's a professor of Islam in America. We've done a great job of building masjids, right? We've done a good job of building masjids. Alhamdulillah, may Allah, preserve and bless everyone who's established these masjids across the country. We're doing a good job of building schools. But now we have to move on to build institutions. And institutions require funding, right? And so the funding that we need now to create institutions has to tap back in to our Islamic paradigms of waqfs, right? And anyone from Indonesia or Malaysia or the Arab world understands what a waqf is. A waqf is when you build up this capital to do good, and then from that capital, you take the residual from that capital to do good. One of the scholars was saying that Uthman, may Allah be pleased with him, established a waqf in Medina that people are still eating from today. 1,400 years from now, people are still getting fed from the waqf that Uthman radiallahu anhu established. And so for our institutions, for schools, for IMAAM, we have to start thinking about endowments. How can we make sure that we're not just spending everything we have? Just like we tell our kids, or just like we tell ourselves that we can't spend all of our paycheck, we have to think about this in the institutional level so that our institutions are able to be strong. I remember, if people remembered, I was on the board of a masjid during COVID. And our masjid, Juma Day is like payday. If I wanted to know how much money we were going to make in a month, I had to ask myself, how many Jumas do we have this month? We got 4 Jumas or 5 Jumas. If there's a snowstorm and it comes Friday morning, we still got to have Juma, because we got to keep the lights on, the imam has to get paid, so on and so forth. So when COVID came, I was like, oh my God, no Juma. We didn't have Juma for 2 years. But alhamdulillah, the community, they started, taking people's, chips that you drive up, and people just came from wherever they came to drive up. And so we can't be communities, right? It's too important for us. It's too important for our children. It's too important for our country not to have institutions that can weather storms. And so when you build an endowment, when you endow an institution, and people, even strong institutions have endowments. Like Harvard has an endowment with billions of dollars, right? And they still charge billions of dollars in tuition, right? So we just need to start that process. And these are baby steps. So, the investment account, the brokerage account, the retirement, and then endowment, because then the investment account starts it because, hey, let's invest what we have extra. And then later on, when you're saying, okay, now we need to really make this a lot more professional, that's when you create an endowment. And the endowment is important because when people want to sue an organization, they're going to sue where the money is. right? And so the reason you create an endowment is that you create this kind of legal barrier. Like you can sue HUD, but you can't sue HUD's wealth, right? You know what I mean? And so the endowment helps you kind of protect the wealth of a community, of an institution, so on and so forth. So that was a little long answer, but those are the four.
I had a quick question. So earlier you mentioned like, I mean, the whole kind of purpose of this talk is to see how to follow investment Islamically, right? Earlier you mentioned there are companies that I guess you guys typically like avoid, such as maybe Lockheed Martin, because you know there's unethical practices. But then there's also companies like Southwest Airlines. I think you mentioned, was it that one, where it still kind of falls in Islamically? I just wanted to know. I guess when it comes to investing, because I'll be honest, I haven't started yet, right? I'm still kind of young. When it comes to like 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, from any of the major companies, maybe like Vanguard or BlackRock, Charles Schwab, is there any that Islamically we should stay away from? Like there's a list where like it does not go against like, or it goes against the guidelines that you mentioned earlier, or are any of the major ones like fine? Like when I start to invest, I don't have to any companies I should worry about, if that makes sense.
No, that's a great question. I'm like we all are. I am aware of where we live. Like I'm aware that I live in America. Is like what is 3 million Muslims, maybe 4. We're having a lot of kids, and things are not going to be 100%, Islamic, right? We're taking baby steps to create the kind of institutions around food, around investments, the things that are imperfect, but we can't make progress, right? The enemy of perfect, or perfect the enemy of progress. And so when there's many people who don't invest in all because they can't find something that's 100% Sharia compliant. And there's many people who never bought homes because there wasn't Sharia compliant financing options. And buying a home is important. And for some people, buying a home is vital, right? And so we have to navigate these things with taqwa and also understanding of what we are and what we're trying to do. And so if you don't have Sharia compliant investment options in your 401k, I personally believe you should still invest in your 401k. And then you just try to find the thing that's most compliant, because you have to do the best you can until you can do better, right? And then once you leave that company, you can always roll it over. And when you have more options, then you can make it Sharia compliant. But if you're at a company and they said, hey, these are our 4 funds, try to say, hey, which of these 4 funds is most aligned with our values, right? No less bonds than the other one, so on and so forth. But, we can't say, well, since I don't have a perfect Sharia compliant opportunity, I'm not going to do anything, right? And some people do that. And, we want everyone to make the decision that's best for them. But we also have to understand that we're living in a very complicated environment. And so I encourage folks to do the best you can, right, until you can do better. Like if you're just opening an investment account or a brokerage account, you have a variety of options, right? But in your 401k and 529s and other kind of investment options, there's still minimum options available. So it's, but alhamdulillah, I think the more that we turn to these options, the more that these options become available for the general community. So the self-directed brokerage account is a great option because it allows for folks who just want to buy a crypto ETF fund to buy it. It allows for people who just want to buy a Sharia compliant mutual fund to buy it.
Okay, I see. Thank you. And
We have a sister. We have a
oh yeah,
question.
yes, we.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. I just want to ask about the lousy account that you're talking about because I have a house before and then I sold it. I moved over here, so I have the money on the side and then just sit doing nothing, and then I didn't take any interest on it too. And then to buy the house over here, I'm not qualified, so I'm waiting for my kid to graduate from college. Maybe I will do. So I don't know what to do for the money just sit down in the bank. Do you have some advice for it?
Definitely. When you're thinking about investing, if you have money sitting in the bank, that money can be invested and can be working. And so we want to be, I want to be cautious because investing requires taking on risk. So if you have $40,000 sitting in the bank, it might be lazy, but it's not going to go anywhere. And if it goes anywhere, the FDIC is going to come back and give it back to you. If you invest it, then you are putting it at risk. But, if you make sure your investments are prudent and you have an investment time horizon, then you can actually, use that funds to make more money for yourself. But you also have to be aware that you're taking on risk. So those both are true. And so, it's worth having a conversation to say, hey, if I have this, $10,000 sitting in the bank and I don't need it, if I lose my job or something else happens, I have other money, I'm not going to have to touch this, then yeah, definitely we'll take a portion of that, kind of invest it in the market, kind of let the market kind of make it grow, so on and so forth. But if I have $10,000 sitting in the bank, and I'm a single parent with 3 children, and if I lose my job, this is the only money I have, then, we're going to want that money to be a little bit more secure. We're not going to want to take a risk with that money, so on and so forth. So you're taking a risk with it. We're not gambling, right? You can get your money out at any time. But, you put the money in today and, the president puts tariffs on Mexico and Canada and Indonesia, then, and the markets respond negatively, then you might have a short-term loss, right? And so you'll have to talk about your time horizon, your risk tolerance. And so for most people, especially if you're new to investing, say if you have 10,000, I'm going to say don't invest 10,000, invest 5, right? Because I want you to feel comfortable and I want you to feel knowledgeable about investing so that, if you put in 10 and you lose 10% and then you take it out, that's when you lost money, right? When you start taking it out.
Yeah, so far I just do like every year you got a refund, and then I just go buy the gold.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
gold is an investment too. So
Yeah.
gold is just usually going to be a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean,
It's going to
the
be
price
safe.
go up and down.
Yeah, it goes up and down. So that's investing. So you're already investing,
Yeah.
right? But I would say over the last 10 years, NVIDIA had a better return than gold. Yeah. In the last 10 years, if you invest in NVIDIA, you'd be like, I don't want no gold, right? Because NVIDIA has gone up like
Yeah.
10, yeah, 500% in the last 10 years, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
gold what? I don't want no gold. Just give me more NVIDIA. No. NVIDIA is just, yeah, fundamentally NVIDIA, and they said it has more room to grow. You know? Like everybody wants to talk to their phones now, so it's like they're gonna need chips to, hey, refrigerator, do you have milk? Refrigerator, do you have milk? Right.
Thanks. One more question for you. I have so Alhamdulillah, I've been blessed throughout college. I was an athlete in college, so I got scholarship plus academic scholarship as well. So because American university is a very expensive university to go to. I think it's like 80,000 to 90,000 just a year, which I pay nothing near that because again scholarships. But now that I'm looking for higher education, although where I'm planning to go in different places have lower cost than that, I don't have that money. I've been working for my university and I get paid, I mean, just like $300 a month. It covers the housing, but that's all I get. So I have to cover expenses. I don't really get much money to save. So my bigger question is, I understand in America, we used to have these things called old school loans, which didn't have interest on them, right? It was just kind of, you borrow, for example, 20,000, you pay 20,000 back. It doesn't have any riba on it. But what do you recommend? Are there Islamic banks that do so or Islamic loans? I just personally don't know.
So, in terms of loans, there's a company called a continuous charity. So, a continuous charity sends you no interest loans. And depending on what field you're in, there's like several scholarship opportunities. Like ISNA has a scholarship opportunity, Islamic Services Foundation. So definitely, we'll talk offline, and I can share those with you, inshallah. So
Okay,
go ahead and
I
close
think
out.
yeah. So we're just a little bit over time. But alhamdulillah, they were all good questions, and we had a amazing presentation with Brotherhood. So inshallah, we're gonna close it now. Was there anything else that you wanted to say to close, brother?
Thank you.
All right, there you go. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody. If again, we have the flyers with the QR code. If you still needed to scan, you didn't get the picture earlier, and business cards as well. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Problem. Okay. Yeah, definitely. I love it. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I've done it for. I had my friend when he had him and his wife and his 4 grown kids and his grandparents. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. The schedule, like on the, if you find a time on there, but if you don't find a time on there, sometimes it's like Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings. We'll get on a Zoom call. But we could do like for when Oasis does it for the youth, for IMSA. Yeah, yeah, we could do it. Yeah. Mhm. So the brokerage is basically there so that you can receive donated shares, Apple, Tesla, so on and so forth. So the brokerage is like, yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's like to invest in a amount of funds, you'll use your investment account. To receive those stocks, you'll use your brokerage account. And then you can transfer money from your brokerage to your investment. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Everything after Ramadan, inshallah, definitely. But even during Ramadan, one of the things that
Just give me the schedule if you want. You have this, flyer you want to, spread it
okay, yeah.
on the table.
But if you have investors, like you might get a donor during Ramadan who wants to donate stock. Just let me know.
We have no promoting, but there are two our members,
Who want to donate stocks?
Yeah.
Okay.
They only donate the stock, but they already put that. Hey, how do I get? And then that's why I her again, but it's not coming. But that's okay.
Yeah. Definitely. Alhamdulillah, it's a great plan. So, we want our
And
community to
also
take advantage of it.
there's a brother live in Ashburn also.
Ashburn, okay.
Yeah, he already put that right on the wheel and everything. But
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's awesome.
So that's why we need to bring up first.
Oh, Adam. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Like salam.
Thank you so much for speaking. So I had a lot of questions about something.
No problem. Like the last question kind of talks about.
Did you get my contact info? I got my card. Okay.
Ibu-ibu kita mau foto bareng dulu ya kalau bisa sebelum pada pulang. Ha-ha. Bapak-bapak foto bareng dulu sama ibu-ibu.
Oh, thank you, I didn't do much. It was all.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allah.
Ayo bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu pada duduk di depan, bapak-bapaknya berdiri di belakang. Ya.
Asyhadu an la
Mana-
ilaha illallah.
Mas Tommy, ditunggu foto. Bang Daus, Mas Amir, kita foto dulu, Mas Safrin. Udah mau asar soalnya, yuk.
Asyhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Asyhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Hayya 'alal shalah. Hayya 'alal shalah. Hayya 'alal falah. Hayya 'alal falah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La
It works. Oh, you going back? Okay. Before that, really that. You know, we want this money to be working for the community. Yeah. That endowment is later, like a little bit more. But once you get that, you create like inside endowment foundation, right? And it'll have a separate board so that if someone they can't come after this $20 million. Okay. Oh wow. Boss away that hey. I think now we have this last year. And it's a little bit of paperwork, so it's like the earlier you do it, the better. You know, because it's with input, you got to get all the people signed. And so for older matches,
Tes 1 2
you know,
3.
it's like, oh, but the board member is like, yeah, but let's go.
Test. Oh, betul.
Udah nggak mahasiswa.
Sebenarnya terbuka bagi umum. Iya,
استووا سووا صفوفكم. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله